morning, students. Welcome to today's session. Today we are going to discuss something that you all are habitual of giving now in your, whether it's your technical subjects or your soft skills. Yes, I'm talking about presentations. So you all know that when we are in our engineering or any professional course, we have to give presentations on different topics every now and then. And this doesn't restrict only in college life, but it goes on for our career. When we are working in a corporate or while we are working for ourselves, we need to give presentations at different stages of our life. So what is very important, what we should do and what we should refrain from doing while giving a presentation is what we are going to discuss today. So, PowerPoint presentation, whenever we are making, we need to follow certain rules, certain do's and don'ts we are already been prescribed with. So let's go and start with the do's that we need to follow while we are making a PowerPoint presentation. So it's very important that when we have to make a presentation, we should know to whom we are going to present this presentation to. This means our audience. It is very important, necessary for us to know what kind of audience I am going to present my presentation to, and accordingly the length and the information will vary from different audiences. So number one point which is very important is to know your audience. That is the first point. Number second, as we are giving presentation in PowerPoint, so it's very important that we need to follow a particular template, professional template for making the presentation. We have different templates available, but we need to check which template will suit my material or my content that I am going to deliver in the presentation the best, and accordingly I have to choose the template. Next is very important, very necessary, and sometimes we just don't take note of it. That is, we are giving so much of information on each slide. Refrain from giving too much information on slides. Always use bullet points in the presentation. So whenever we are giving a presentation, we have different bullet points and we have to explain them one by one. Next important though is that there has to be a sequential flow of information. For example, if we are addressing a situation, an event, then we need to tell about the reasons for that particular situation, the steps needed to overcome that, and then what is the expected result that we are talking about. We cannot just mix it up and present it anyway, because then the audience will be confused what we are all talking about. So very important, we should have coherence in the context that we are presenting to our audience. Next, very important is when we are showing the presentation, it should always be in a slideshow mode. The screen has to be there, which everybody is able to see and understand what all content is there on the screen. Next important point is the font styles and size. It should not be too big or too small that the audience is not able to read from the slides. Next is the formal font size. What formal font style we have to use? We can use calligraphy, we can use Arial Black, we can use Times New Roman, and a few more formal styles of writing. So yes, font style does make a difference when we are talking about making presentations or presenting the presentations. Next important point is what is the background? The background should never be very loud. It should just gel up with the text. The text has to be more visible so that the focus of the audience is on the text rather than on the background that is there on the slides. Next important point is whenever we have to show any data, any statistics, we should always go for inserting certain graphs, tables that will make it more clear to the audience what we are going to show them. Next, there are some don'ts that we should definitely not include while we are giving a proper presentation. So number one, which is very important, is that the slide that we are showing should not have more than 5 to 7 bullet lines, right? So the text, whatever we are showing, even if we are showing in bullet points, it has to have maximum of 5 to 7 bullet lines in one slide. And how many are the maximum slide that we can use in a PowerPoint presentation? It should not exceed more than 20 to 25 slides in one presentation, because otherwise it will become very boring and monotonous for the audience to actually focus on throughout our presentation. one of the very major points that we need to take care of when we are giving presentation is that never read from the slides. We should never read from the slides through the lines. We should always try to make an eye contact with the audience so that they are understanding that we are addressing to them. It's not that just we are coming, standing on the stage and reading out all the slides, that they can do themselves as well. So it's all about making the presentation more interactive, more impressive. So when we are giving a presentation, always remember that making an eye contact is very important. Never read from the lines, from the text. Next is when we are giving transition, while custom animation we are using in our presentations, we should try not to use a random option, because that is really going to, change the focus of the audience to those effects only rather than what we are talking about, the content of the presentation. Next very important point is whenever there is no requirement of any videos, any sound recordings, please do not include it. When the content is such that you really need to add something like that, then it's definitely going to be your choice. But otherwise, we should refrain from using such tools in our presentations. Next, we should always remember that the audience is the one with whom we are interacting. This means we need to have a smile on our face when we are presenting our content, and we should be always open for discussion. Ask them for their opinions, their questions when we are presenting. Before ending up the presentation, it's again very important that we understand that we have completely taken care of all the points that were there in the presentation, and nevertheless we are thanking our audience for being a very patient audience. Now these were some of the do's and don'ts that we need to follow while giving a PowerPoint presentation. Apart from that, you all know that when we are making preparations for PowerPoint presentation, or we are actually making the presentation, what are the basic important factors that we need to take care of? The language has to be very simple. It should be understood by the audience. So that's why when we know the audience, we know the level of audience interaction that we might have. Accordingly, we have to make our slides. That doesn't mean that we can't use good vocab. We must use it wherever it's required. But yes, it has to be very simple, and it should be like everybody's able to understand what we are saying. Cohesion of text, again important. Once again, I am reiterating this point, because if there is not a sequential flow of information, the audience will be confused and they won't be able to connect to you. Last but not the least, one very important point is that always try to be there while presenting. This means you need not only be there physically but mentally also. Whenever there is an interaction, you might end up somebody coming from the audience and asking you something, and if you are confused, if you are nervous, you might stuck somewhere and you won't be able to discuss or explain the same thing. So be very particular, very well prepared with whatever content you have, so that if there's a discussion, you can just figure it out. It's always good if you can crack a joke in between, or narrate an incident that would connect the audience back to your presentation, but that has to be in alliance with the content that you are producing. I hope you all have understood what we need to do and what we should refrain from doing while presenting a PowerPoint presentation, and that's definitely going to help you in your future course of presenting the different topics before different audience. Thank you so much. Have a good day.